Girivaradari Yashodanandana Braja Janaranjana Yashodanandana Braja Janaranjana Yamunadira Vanachari Yamunadira Vanachari Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Vihari Jaya Vishnupada Paramahamsa Puri Vrajagacharya Sotar Srimad His Divine Grace of Acharya Vinda Bhaktivedanta Swami Srila Prabhupada Ki ISKCON Founder Acharya Srila Prabhupada Ki Jaya Vishnupada Paramahamsa Puri Vrajagacharya Sotar Srimad His Divine Grace Srila Bhaktivedanta Saraswati Goswami Maharaj Prabhupada Ki Ananta Koti Vaishnava Vrinda Ki Acharya Srila Haridas Thakur Ki Prem Se Kaho Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhar Srivasadi Gaura Bhaktivinoda Ki Shri Shri Radha Krishna Gopa Govindana Shyam Puri Radha Giri Govardhan Ki Shri Vrindavan Dham Ki Shri Mayapur Dham Ki Shri Chaitra Jagannath Puri Dham Ki Bhakti Devi Tulsi Maharani Ki Harinam Sankirtan Yagya Ki Hare Krishna Mahamantra Ki Grantara Srimad Bhagavatam Ki Nitai Gaur Premanande All glories to assembled devotees. All glories to assembled devotees. All glories to assembled devotees. All glories to Sri Sri Guru, Sri Gauranga, all glories to Srila Prabhupada, Srila Prabhupada Ki Jai. Om Agyanatamarandasya Gyananjana Shalakaya Chakshurmilitam Yena Tasmai Sri Gurue Namaha Shri Chaitanya Manobhistam Stapitam Yena Bhutale Swayam Rupa Kadamayam Dadati Swapadantikam Vandayam Shri Guru Shri Yuta Padakamalam Shri Gurun Vaishnavamscha Shri Rupam Shagajatam Sagana Raghunathan Vitam Tam Sajivam Sadvaitam Savadutam Parijana Saitam Krishna Chaitanya Devam Shri Radha Krishna Padan Sagana Lalita Shri Vishakhanvitamscha Hey Krishna Karuna Sindhu Dinabandhu Jagapate Gopesha Gopaka Kanta Radha Kanta Namostate Tapta Kanchana Gaurangi Radhe Vrindavanishwari Visubhanu Suti Devi Paramami Hari Priye Vancha Kalpataraguscha Kripa Sindhubhyevacha Patitanam Pavanebhyo Vaishnavebhyo Namo Namaha Jaya Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhar Srivas Adi Gaur Bhaktavinda Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare Hare Mare Kabando Matsangin Madguru Manmadana Madhistadaka Madbhagya Marananda Namostate Asaru Saru Tadaya Natini Chochatakara Hanamuncha Karachinmam Primna Hitkatayospara Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Narayana Namaskritanam Chaivanottamam Devim Saraswatim Vyasam Tato Jayam Vidirai Nastapradeshu Bhadreshu Nityam Bhagavata Sevaya Bhagavati Uttamashloke Bhakti Bhakti Naishtaki. Hare Krishna, dear devotees. Today we're reading from Srimad Bhagavatam, Canto 5, Creative Impetus. Chapter number 3, Rishabhadev's appearance. Text number 9. So it's in prose, so I'll just read it. We'll go through the word for word, the purport. Again, some discussion. Tadyata Vaishanam Swayam Atmana Shraya Param Avidusam Parama Purusha Prakasha Karunaya Swamahimanam Chapavargayakam Upakalpai Ishan Swayam Napachita Evitaravad Iho Palakshita. Word for word. Tat, that. Yata, as. Balishanam, of the fools. Swayam, by yourself. Atmanaha, own. Shreya, welfare. Param, ultimate. Avidusham, of persons who do not know. Parama Purusha. O Lord of Lords. Prakarsha Karunaya. By abundant causeless mercy. Swamahimanam, your personal glory. Cha, and Apavarga Akyam, called Apavarga, liberation. Upakalpaishyan, desiring to give. Swayam, personally. Apachitaha, not properly worshipped. Eva, although. Taravat, like an ordinary person. Iha, here. Upalakshitaha, you are present and seen by us. Srila Prabhupada's translation. O Lord of Lords, we are completely ignorant of the execution of Dharma, Artha, Kama, and Moksha, the process of liberation, because we do not actually know the goal of life. You have appeared personally before us like a person soliciting worship, but actually you are present here just so we can see you. You have come out of your abundant and causeless mercy in order to serve our purpose, our interest, and give us the benefit of your personal glory called Apavarga, liberation. You have come, although you are not properly worshipped by us due to our ignorance. Please repeat. O Lord of Lords, we are completely ignorant of the execution of Dharma, Artha, Kama, and Moksha, the process of liberation, because we do not actually know the goal of life. You have appeared personally before us, like a person soliciting worship. But actually, you are present here just so we can see you. You have come out of your abundant and causeless mercy in order to serve our purpose, our interest, and give us the benefit of your personal glory, called Apavarga, liberation. You have come, although you are not properly worshipped by us, due to our ignorance. Purport. Lord Vishnu was personally present at the sacrificial arena, but this does not mean that he had any interest in his own personal benefit. Similarly, the Archa Vigraha, the deity in the temple, is present for the same purpose. Out of his causeless mercy, the Supreme Personality of Godhead presents himself before us so we can see him. Since we have no transcendental vision, we cannot see the spiritual Satchit Ananda Vigraha of the Lord. Therefore, out of his causeless mercy, he comes in a form we can see. We can only see material things like stone and wood, and therefore he accepts a form of stone and wood, and thus accepts our service in the temple. This is an exhibition of the Lord's causeless mercy. Although he has no interest in such things, in order to receive our loving service, he agrees to act as he does. We cannot actually offer suitable paraphernalia for the Lord's worship, because we are completely ignorant. It was out of his causeless mercy that the Lord appeared in the sacrificial arena of Maharaj Nabi. Namo Vishnu Padaya Krishna Prishtaya Bhutale Srimate Bhaktivedanta Swami Tinamani. Namaste Saraswati Devi Gauravani Pachari Shani Vadi Paschatare Shatari. Hare Krishna. So it was a beautiful point here. Prabhupada's bringing up this point about the goal of life, and these sages and Maharaj Nabi are expressing to the Lord that they are unaware of the goal of life, that they're unaware of this process of dharma, artha, moksha, kama. And in that regard, the second verse of Srimad Bhagavatam explains dharma projito kaitavotar paramo nirmatsaranam satam vedyam vastavam atravastu shivanam tapa trayonmulanam. Explains that this beautiful Bhagavatam is completely rejecting those processes of religion which are considered kaitava dharma. Those are cheating processes of religion, and Prabhupada defines those as the process of dharma, artha, kama, and moksha. So Bhagavatam is rejecting those things. Rather, it is relished by those who are satam, those great pure devotees who are near matsara. They're free of envy. So the Bhagavatam is relished by devotees who are free from envy, and it's rejecting these religious processes which are considered kaitava dharmas or cheating religions. So because of that, it is completely uprooting the threefold miseries of material existence and bestowing the highest truth, which is reality distinguished from illusion, for the benefit of all. So this is the introduction to Bhagavatam. Right off the second verse, it's a canon expressing that there is a genuine difference between what is considered kaitava dharma and what is considered the real religion, which is actually going to free us from misery, and which is actually relishable by those elevated and advanced souls. And so, Mahamuni Kritikim, that this Bhagavatam is composed by Vyasadeva in his maturity. Simply by hearing Srimad Bhagavatam submissively, this culture of knowledge, which is an interesting point also, that Bhagavatam is a cultural presentation. Prabhupada points that out in the beginning of the Bhagavatam introduction. It's a cultural presentation. So it's not just meant for our own individual rectification, it's actually meant to rectify the whole culture. So you can't throw out the cultural elements of Bhagavatam. So simply by hearing Bhagavatam in a submissive attitude, the Supreme Lord becomes established in one's heart. So therefore, these goals of life, karma, artha, moksha, dharma, they're not actually going to give us satisfaction. Even liberation, which is, we have this one boy I've been preaching to quite often. He's speaking often about moksha because he's studying kind of, Hinduism and, Eastern philosophy. And there's so much talk of moksha. And, right off the bat, we don't say it, but actually at a certain point we have to say, actually, that's not really our goal. We're actually not interested in liberation. Devahuti says, Salokya Sharshti Samipya Sarupya Katam Achitaha Diyamanam Nagrinati Vinamat Sevanam Janaha. That we're not interested in the 5 types of liberation, Salokya Sharshti Samipya Ekatva. We're not interested to a devotee because the devotee is only interested in service to the Lord. Vinamat Sevanam Janaha. If he can't do seva, he can't become a servant of Krishna, he's not interested in these liberations. And so understanding that, the devotee, he has to realize that you can never be happy in life on the platform of selfishness. This is a Buddhist, the Buddhists speak about that often. The Buddhists often speak about how, as long as we're thinking of ourselves, we're miserable. And if we're thinking of others and thinking of serving, we're happy. But they don't understand what's the object of supreme service. That's going to give us the highest happiness. We understand that's Krishna. When we serve Krishna, we get the highest happiness. So the devotees, they're not interested in liberation, and they're not interested in being selfish. So even the desire for liberation is a selfish desire. One can be interested in, artha, let me make money. That's never satisfying. We can understand that. One who's always interested in making money is not satisfied. And we see that in the world today. There's so many people are interested in making money. That's generally the first thing people think about when they wake up, and the last thing they think about when they go to bed is how much money I'm going to make. And they make all their decisions in life based on that. I knew one girl, remember when I did a lot of music growing up, and I was playing in the marching band. And there was a girl, she was a fantastic flute player, and one of the most amazing flute players I'd ever come across. And she was, honor band and national honor band. So, and she loved playing music, and she was also our drum major for the marching band. She was a fantastic musician. And so it was just, I assumed she was going to go into music, but I asked her once, I said, are you going to go into music? She goes, no, I love music. I want to do music, but music doesn't make any money. Therefore, I'm not going to do any music. I'm going to do something I hate rather so that I can make money. And so in this way, the living entities in the material world who are after this artha, they're always thinking, am I going to make money? And there's so much sacrifice necessary to make money in the material sense. And so they're not happy. My Guru Maharaj often speaks of, I think Jeff Bezos, he had that, it was like $50 billion divorce. A $50 billion horse made of platinum. Yeah, he had a divorce. He's trying to have a relationship, but even his 50, 100 plus $billion weren't able to satisfy, and allow him to have a decent relationship. So he'd have a divorce. He'd end up having the most expensive divorce in history. So in this way, this art that doesn't satisfy us, dharma, we see that in the world today, just be a good person. We hear that so much when we go out and preach. Well, I don't necessarily believe in any particular religion. I just want to be a good person. And then amongst Hindu society, there's so much talk of dharma, doing our dharma, which is a high level of consciousness, no doubt. It's encouraged, do your dharma. That's also not the ultimate end goal, because Krishna ultimately says, Sarva dharman prityaja mamekam sharanam vraja, abandon all varieties of dharma and surrender unto me. So I was speaking in my Bhagavatam class Wednesday of different types of dharma. We have our conditional dharma, and we have our constitutional dharma. So our conditional dharma is the dharma we find ourselves in via our body and circumstances. So someone may find themselves as a brahmachari, or may find themselves as a grihastha, perhaps may find themselves as a kshatriya, may find themselves as a brahmana, wherever they may find themselves, they have a conditional dharma. And they have to perform that dharma nicely. That's ideal. They can perform that dharma nicely and offer it to Krishna. Krishna explains, Tasmat sarveshu kaleshu mam anusmaram nidyacha maya pratamana buddhir mame vashasha shamshaya. Perform your prescribed duty, in this case of fighting, while thinking of me in the form of Krishna. With your mind and intelligence attached to me, you will come to me without fail. So we have our conditional dharmas, but for devotees, we can offer that conditional dharma to Krishna, and we can think of Krishna while performing it. And Prabhupada explains that even a person working in the world, if they can internally always chant Hare Krishna while doing their regular, what would appear like mundane duties, they're actually transcendental and they're going to come to Krishna. It's a very powerful purport. However, on the other side of things, we have our constitutional dharma, which is the dharma of the soul. And we understand that's a different thing altogether. Sutta Goswami says, Savai Pumsam Paradharmo Yato Bhaktir Hoksajay. That the real dharma, the supreme dharma, the paradharma for all humanity is bhakti yoga, Yato Bhaktir Hoksajay, if we can do our constitutional dharma. So there's a balance we have to kind of take between our constitutional dharma and our conditional dharma. Because if we just abandon our conditional dharma prematurely, then we're not going to be able to function properly just doing our constitutional dharma. And we see this in Arjuna's case. Arjuna wants to abandon his conditional dharma, in that case of being a fighter. And Krishna tells him that even if you try to avoid it, you can't avoid it because you're a fighter by nature. So that's where the concept of karma yoga comes in. The idea is that one performs their conditional dharma without attachment, in a detached way, and that purifies them of that propensity. And at a certain point, such a person is able to renounce and become a genuine sadhu, in the sense of just acting only for Krishna, or acting only in the processes of devotional service, hearing, chanting, remembering. That's the genuine process for most people to, come to that stage of where I'm just fully absorbed in Krishna consciousness. If someone has a propensity to act in a certain way and they don't fulfill it, then that can cause them a lot of trouble. Of course, the process of hearing and chanting is so powerful that it will greatly reduce that conditional situation. And even if someone tries, ultimately there's no loss. Narad Muni explains, Tvakta swadharmam charanam bhujam harir bhajana pakro tapatet tato yadi yatrakavabha dharma buddha musyukim govartapto bhajatam swadharmataha. Narad Muni is explaining that even if one abandons their Tvakta swadharma, they abandon their swadharma to engage in the service of the lotus feet of Hari, but they fall down prematurely, there's no loss. But if someone performs their swadharma without becoming attached to Krishna, there's no gain. They didn't actually gain anything. So ultimately, the main thing we should focus on of the two is our constitutional dharma. Let me become a very nice devotee of Krishna via processes of hearing, chanting, and so forth. But we shouldn't, just throw it out immediately if we are unable to come to that stage. Prabhupada tells us so much work now, samadhi later. Means let us work now, let us perform our works for Krishna, dedicate them to Krishna, give the fruits to Krishna. That will purify us so that at a certain point we can actually nicely engage in hearing and chanting 9 processes of bhakti exclusively. So, dharma, artha, kama, we know that kama is not going to satisfy our senses, satisfy our minds and our hearts. I was saying for the last 3 weeks now, the sense gratification is a misnomer because actually there's no such thing as sense gratification. The senses are never actually gratified because they're always wanting more. I was hearing Ajahn Maharaj was, he had passed away. I listened to a few classes from him past. And there was in one class he was explaining how in this regard to sense gratification, he always kind of, you never know if his stories are, where they're at, but anyways, he was telling a beautiful story about when I was a little boy, and we went on a camping trip. He tells the story so beautifully, so nicely. And he was saying, his dad had to lit a fire, and it was time to put the fire out. So his dad threw a clear liquid on the fire. He saw the fire went out. So then Maharaj was expressing how his parents were down at the lake, and they decided they were lit a fire, him and his brother. And they said, it's time to put the fire out. They were going to pour clear liquid on it, but instead of pouring water, they poured gasoline on the fire. He said, what was the first thing that happened? Everybody said, it exploded. He said, no, that's the second thing that happened. The first thing that happened is it dies down because it's drenched by the fluid. The next thing that happens is it explodes and it burned off their hair and eyebrows. So the idea is that we may think we're gratifying our senses and it does die down, but actually after that it explodes into a more intense fire, desire for sense gratification. So kama is ultimately not satisfying. And then moksha, even moksha, if it's like Devahuti is saying, Vinamat Sevanam Janaha, if it's devoid of this desire to serve Krishna, it ultimately doesn't satisfy us. Because how can we be satisfied without love? And so we're always thinking of ourselves, I want moksha. Then we're not actually thinking of others, we're not actually thinking of the Lord, we're not actually developing a loving attitude. In this way, it's not satisfying. So one of the nice elements of devotional service is that devotional service, spiritual life, genuine spiritual life exists on the platform of love. I remember when I was like 15 years old, I realized that there's nothing beyond love. Love is the highest thing. I kind of had that realization. I didn't know what that meant, so to speak, but I realized that love is the ultimate goal of life. But most people don't know actually what love is. Genuine love is the service to the Lord and service to the living entities via the service of the Lord. So therefore, the devotees do things in a very different way than the people after liberation. We may find that someone who's seeking liberation or seeking some type of gratification, dharma, artha, kama, moksha, a religious process, they may be performing austerities, they may be performing sacrifices, they may be performing various rituals and rites, but why are they performing them? Ultimately, they're performing them so that they can get something. And so the devotees are also performing fire sacrifices. Sometimes we're also worshiping deities. We're also chanting mantras. We're also doing so many different things. So why is it that the devotees are in a different position than the karmis? Because a genuine devotee has a different intention. The devotee is doing it just to please Krishna, whereas the karmis are doing it to get something. But we also have to be aware and be conscious of our own kind of intentions. Are we actually doing it just to please Krishna? For instance, I've heard these kind of statements before. If you chant the holy name one time, Haridas Thakur explains, chant the holy name one time, you can become liberated. We hear things like Yanamadeya Shravana Nukirtana Yat Pravanad Yat Smaranadapi Kvachit Charopi Sadhya Savadaya Kalpate Kutuspunaste Bhagavandu Darshanat. If one simply chants Hare Krishna, even if they just hear the holy name of Krishna, what to speak of seeing Krishna, then they're qualified to perform Vedic sacrifices. And the next verse explains that all the tapas, all the austerity, all the fire sacrifices, all the sacred baths, all of the good behavior of the Aryan people is present in a person who's chanting the holy name. So why is it I'm doing all this austerity? Why am I brahmachari? Why am I doing this and that? Why am I waking up so early if I don't have to? Why am I going through so much struggle if I'm already going to go back to Godhead? And so this is the wrong mentality. This is not the mentality of a devotee. Rather, the devotee is doing all these things out of love to serve Krishna. That's the genuine and real austerity. Is the sacrifice is not for me to make some spiritual advancement. There was one personality who was speaking recently, and he was expressing, you do some austerity, you say mantra every day, and the Lord will give you a benefit. You'll make spiritual advancement, which is okay. I'm not condemning that. But what we are saying is that the genuine austerity is when you do austerity for the purpose of serving Krishna. In the service to others, like like our Parameshwar Prabhu, he's just passed through, and one of the most austere personalities I've ever come across, without a doubt, if not the most austere personality I've ever come across. Living in the van for 30 years, and he distributed more books than any other book distributor in ISKCON history. And so, what an amazing person. And I was hearing one devotee who was with him in the van, they were saying, Parameshwar got up so early and he was doing his bath and he was pouring the water himself. He said the water was actually freezing on the ground under him, turning to ice. And he was going out in his, he has the spacesuit jacket, and he distributes books in the freezing cold at in Michigan. So this is an austere person, but the austerity is not for my benefit. The austerity is because Krishna wants me to distribute these books. This is my service. And these conditioned souls need this mercy. So let me go out and perform this austerity. And Srila Prabhupada was living in Vrindavan comfortably. He could have done so many austerities. But Prabhupada's biggest austerity was he actually came to America for our benefit. So in that way, all of the austerities we do are done out of love. They're not done out of, let me get something out of it. And this is alluded to in the Bhagavad Gita, where Krishna explains that there are 4 types of pious living entities who come to him. There's those who are after money, artis, those who are in distress, those who are jigyasurs, those who are curious, and those who are jnanis, those who are seeking knowledge of the absolute truth. So all of those 4, Krishna explains that the jnanis are the best because they're in full knowledge of him and they're engaging in devotional service. But also there's a point that's made, is that they're not pure devotees yet. Why are they not pure devotees? What separates the jnani and all of those from the pure devotee? Yeah, the jnani is thinking selfishness. Yeah, the jnani is thinking, I want knowledge. I want to know God. I want to know so many things about God, and I'm performing devotional service so I can get this knowledge. But they're actually still thinking about their own spiritual advancement. And when you look at the residents of Vrindavan, do you think Mother Yashoda is thinking, I need to advance more in Krishna consciousness. She's so Krishna conscious, she's not thinking about this. She's thinking, how can I serve Krishna? That's all she's thinking. And she's not thinking, I don't really want to I would like to be giving Bhagavatam class rather than churning this butter and cleaning up after Krishna. She's not thinking that way. So the residents of Vrindavan are just thinking, how can I serve Krishna today? And actually, they're not attached to the service. They're not attached to the activity at all. They're completely pure devotees. Their only attachment is to Krishna. And so a pure devotee, he's not attached to, my service. It's not your service, it's Krishna's service. He's attached to Krishna. And so if Krishna wants him to mop the floor today, then he'll do that. If Krishna wants him to clean the toilets today, then he'll do that. If Krishna wants him to do this or that, then he'll do that. So in that way, the pure devotee is elevated beyond the jnani. So therefore, this pure devotional service, it's done all on the platform of love. And that's why it's explained by Krishna, Bhoktaram Yagitapasam, that all of the real austerities ultimately go to Krishna. So why do we need to think for ourselves? Bhoktaram Yagitapasam, Sarvaloka Maheshwaram. He's in control of everything and he's our friend. This is reciprocal. And then you can become peaceful. And therefore we understand that those who are after Gyan, they're not peaceful. The yogis aren't peaceful. They're after mystic powers. The karmis aren't peaceful. They're after sense gratification. The only ones who are peaceful are the bhaktas. The bhaktas are peaceful. So Krishna owns all. What did we really have to give? When we think, oh, I'm doing so much austerity or sacrifice, in this case, what do I have to give? Krishna's Ishavasyamidam Sarvam Yat Kincha Jagatam Jagat. Everything is owned and controlled by Krishna. There's no question of giving up anything, actually. Everything's owned by Krishna anyways. So we can't really give Krishna anything. The only thing that we can do is use our free will to serve all of our paraphernalia, all the things that come in our field, via our karma, via our constitutional and conditional situation. We use everything for Krishna as it comes. And you try to be satisfied with that. And in this way, we'll be happy. There's examples in Bhagavatam of this, austerity for Krishna. Like Dhruva Maharaj was doing austerities for Krishna, but they were not for the right purpose. He wanted to see Krishna, and he was doing austerities, but there was still a purpose behind it. And then once he saw Krishna, he associated with Krishna personally. Actually, first he associated with Narada Muni. And by seeing Krishna in that way, he became a pure devotee, where then his only desire was to serve Krishna. And that's also described in that same 7th chapter of Bhagavad Gita. There's those 4 types of people who come to Krishna. Then Krishna explains that they're not pure devotees. But then he says, Bahunam janmanamante jnanavan mam prapadyate vasudevam sarvamiti samahatma sadurlabha. That after many, many births and deaths, one who's actually a jnanavan, one who actually achieves the knowledge he's looking for, mam prapadyate, he surrenders unto me, knowing me to be the cause of all causes and everything that be. Vasudevam sarvamiti. There's nothing but me. He says this is very rare, but it doesn't have to be very rare because we're in the age of Lord Chaitanya. So Prabhupada in that purport to 719, he says, Vasudevam sarvamiti, he says that one realizes that Krishna's mercy is everything. Krishna's mercy is everything. And so upon realizing that, he becomes pure. And he says that it's by association with a pure devotee that one develops this sense of, just let me serve Krishna. And we see that all of those, some of the individuals, they come to the temple, they're always curious, or they're seeking liberation, or they're seeking, different things. But by associating with the devotees, we find that they become purified, and they become uplifted. So we can't really give Krishna much. We can only give him our desire. And therefore, Krishna explains what real renunciation is. He says, Anashrita karma palam karyam karma karotiya sasanyasi cha yogi cha naniragdirna chakraya. Is that one who performs his duty without attachment and works as he is obligated, not being attached to the fruits. That's the real yogi, that's the real sannyasi, not one who lights no fire and performs no action. Therefore, we should work as obligated. Like I was preaching to one boy last night, and he was saying, he's kind of overtly impressed by, people living kind of a monastic lifestyle, brahmacharya, ascetic lifestyle. And I said, well, it doesn't really mean much ultimately, because really the real sannyasis, he was serving Krishna. I gave Mother Sundamini as an example. I said, well, she's in charge of this whole massive, few acres, and there's so much money coming through the temple, and donations, and the restaurant is going on, and so many things are happening. And a normal person who's, we have other vegan restaurants in town, we have Tumerico's, and it's one of the I think Tumerico's is considered, last year it won the award for the best vegan restaurant in the entire country. It's a nice place, but Govinda's, it's very popular in Tucson amongst the vegans and the vegetarians. And there's so much, sometimes the news comes here on Thanksgiving. It's a popular place. And if some, regular karmi person started a restaurant like this, they'd be living it up. They'd be living in the foothills, and they'd be swimming in their pool and going to vacation in Hawaii, once a year. But we see that our devotees who work here, Mother Sundamini, she's living actually more simply than all of the devotees are, right? Doing more service. Because it's all for Krishna. It's all Krishna's money. And so this is genuine yogi, genuine sannyas. Prabhupada explains that. Krishna explains what is renunciation should be considered the same as yoga. And that genuine renunciation is, let me use everything for Krishna. Let me give up my own desires. And if I have my own desires, let me use my own desires for Krishna. And then so Prabhupada continues on this purport. He speaks about how Krishna is appearing to these sages and to Maharaj Nabi, just like a person soliciting worship, but actually he's present just out of his mercy. And then Prabhupada relates that to the deity, that the deity is present just out of his mercy. And so we had one time, sometimes different schools come here, and they come here and they want to have a little, they're like the religious studies class comes here. And so one year the Waldorf school came, and I gave a presentation. I was explaining, this is our temple, this is the deities. And one little girl, she wasn't that little, she decided she wanted to stand up for her Lord and Savior. Expressed to me that I'm a demon for worshiping statues. And, I handled it pretty well. And I just said, okay, what are you trying to get out of your religious process? But we all know that all the devotees who go on Sankirtan know that Jesus is the way, the truth, and the light. No one comes to the Father if not through him. Not to degrade Christianity on Good Friday. It's a very special day. But, this is the rhetoric. So I said, we're not so interested in salvation or hell and heaven and stuff. I said, actually, we're trying to develop love for God. And I said, this deity worship is a meditation. It's not that the stone itself is God. I said, would you agree that God is everywhere? Well, yeah, God is everywhere. Would you believe that everything is God's energy? Yes. So then this is God's energy. Furthermore, I said, God can appear in a burning bush. God can appear anywhere. This is God's energy. And so this is a meditation that we're doing in order to increase our love for God in a personal way. And then our Guru Sundar Prabhu, he chimed in very nicely and he said, don't you have a picture of your mom or dad in your house? Or your grandpa? Or, your aunts and uncles, cousins? You have pictures of them in your house because you love them? Well, yeah, she said. So, okay, so in the same way, having a picture of God, or in this case, a Murti of God, is also the same thing because we love. And because God is everywhere, we understand that. So this is a way in which our service is being reciprocated. Especially, and then furthermore, I didn't go into this, but she was kind of shut down by the answer. And the teacher apologized, actually, but I said, no big deal. It's actually, we appreciate that. And those kids actually wrote me a letter of gratitude, which I never got before. It was really sweet. And all of them signed it, but I don't think she did. But they were really sweet. They were a sweet bunch. The South Point kids, one year they came, they were like the most super intelligent. But one of these kids actually ended up coming to the temple a few times for our Ram Fest and a few different festivals. The deity worship, the Pancharatrika Vidya, it's specifically given to us so that we can purify ourselves. And we understand devotional service, especially in our Gaudiya Vaishnavism, as Prabhupada's presented, is on 2 tracks. And this is a very misunderstood topic by a lot of devotees. There's 2 tracks. One track is the track of Vaidhi Marg, and one track is the path of, they say Raga Marg, but actually a lot of times they're often called Pancharatrika Vidya and Bhagavat Vidya, with these 2 tracks. And they're parallel, just like you have a train track, they're parallel. But of the 2, the Bhagavat Marg is more important. So the Bhagavat Marg is the process of hearing and chanting about Krishna, reading Srimad Bhagavatam. And it is in itself sufficient to take one from the lowest platform and elevate them to the highest platform. If you can hear and chant Hare Krishna, and you can hear Srimad Bhagavatam, you can go from being the totally lowest personality to a Paramahamsa. It will take you there. But the problem that 95% of individuals face is that they're unable to actually apply themselves to the Bhagavat Marg completely in such a way that they can come to that stage, that Paramahamsa stage. So therefore, there's the Pancharatrika Marg, which is the path of rules, regulations, and deity worship, wherein the living entity or the personality that's practicing the Bhagavat Marg now is also engaging in the process of deity worship to engage the senses, which are always hungry for gratification, in the service of the Lord, and therefore satisfy themselves. And therefore, it's specifically recommended, although for everybody, for grihastas, so that the grihasta can have Krishna in the center of the house, and therefore they can purify their senses. So, and there's unlimited benefit to doing deity worship. I mean, it's really unlimited benefit. It'll steady everything out. It'll help you in your hearing and chanting. That's ultimately what it's meant to do, if you can do it nicely. Krishna is so kind to me that he's come to me in the form of a Govardhan Shila, which I've been worshiping faithfully every day for almost 2.5 years. And when Giriraj came, my life totally changed. It was really amazing. People ask, because pujaris, I do pujari stuff here. People always sometimes ask, have you had any mystical experiences? And I can't say I've had, Krishna come steal a pot of sweet rice or anything like that. But one thing I can say is that the way that the deity worship affects my consciousness and the mercy that I feel from doing deity worship is more miraculous to me than anything. When Giriraj came, my japa became totally enhanced, totally steadied my japa, steadied my life, my service became so much more steady. My chanting became more steady, my reading became more steady, everything became more steady. The space that I live in became so much more clean. Everything became very much better because of that Govardhan Giriraj's mercy. And so when you do deity worship, it helps steady yourself first and foremost. Krishna, my Guru Maharaj always says that the two primary qualifications for good deity worship are steadiness and cleanliness. That's what makes Radharani actually accept your deity worship, when you're steady and when you're clean. So if those things aren't present, then it's kind of a facsimile of deity worship. So we get this steadiness, we get this cleanliness, we learn how to, function nicely in a steady way. And just by serving the deity, you become so purified. It's quite amazing. You can experience that. And we see that devotees, they become very steady and purified by engaging in deity worship. So in that way, a living entity can use the deity worship to elevate themselves to where then once again they can engage in this Bhagavat Marg. And so we can see also even the Goswamis, who were Paramahamsas, they were also worshiping deities, but their deity worship was not in the mood of rules and regulations. Their deity worship was simply out of love because they saw Krishna everywhere, but they're also just worshiping the deity just because I love the deity. I love Krishna. I want to have a reciprocal relationship with this deity. So just in regards to this deity worship, we understand that Krishna is appearing everywhere, but he's coming in the form of a deity under his internal potency to reciprocate with us. And it's not because he needs worship. And it's not that we're worshiping the stone itself. We're worshiping Krishna, who's everywhere, through this medium. And Krishna is accepting that worship mercifully. And the devotees can develop a relationship, and it can increase our personal relationship with Krishna. It can make things more deep so that we can have a better relationship with Krishna. But I want to make one point clear, and this is something that I feel is quite misunderstood amongst devotees I speak to, is that of these two paths, we have to understand, which one's working at which times. For instance, in regards to the process of Diksha and initiation, there's a lot of confusion. The Bhagavat Marg, Diksha is not how we see it. It's not like, doing a fire yagya and getting beads and so forth. When we see that Lord Chaitanya, when he was going out and he was initiating the whole world into Krishna consciousness, he wasn't chanting on everybody's beads and giving them a fire yagya and giving them a name. That was not Lord Chaitanya's process. He was saying, chant Hare Krishna, Bhajo Krishna, Koro Krishna. Chant Hare Krishna, listen to Krishna, Koro Krishna Shiksha. Follow Krishna. And in this way, they were becoming initiated. Vaikuntanath Prabhu, who left his body here in Tucson, in his Prabhupada memories, he asked Prabhupada, he said, Prabhupada, your books are saying that every person, in order to be successful in Krishna consciousness, needs to be initiated by a spiritual master. So why are we distributing your books if not all of these individuals have access to a spiritual master? And Prabhupada thought about it. Prabhupada said, if they read my books one time, they're initiated. So how are we to understand this? This tends to ruffle a lot of feathers. How are we to understand this? Because the process of initiation in the Bhagavat Marg is to hear and to chant. And when someone tells you chant Hare Krishna, that's an initiation. When you're hearing from a guru, hearing a Bhagavatam class, that is the process. And so in that way, one can make wonderful spiritual advancement. Krishna says, Tadvidi Pranipad. Tadvidi means inquire about that which is absolute. Tadvidi Pranipad fall down like a stick and serve, do seva, be very humble and serve. This is the process of approaching a spiritual master. Humility and service. So what is the whole ceremony we go through? This ceremony is the Pancharatrika ceremony, which is the ceremony for initiating one into the process of Pancharatrika Marg. And so it's not that your Diksha Guru, Maharajas, is not also your initiating you in the Bhagavatam Marg also. If you're hearing from him nicely and you're inspired by him, that's also, hearing. That's also, he's your guru for all intents and purposes. But the initiation ceremony, which we call Diksha, which we do in ISKCON, that process is coming from the Pancharatrika Marg, wherein one is getting 5 different elements in that initiation. They're getting a name, they're getting a mantra, they're getting, what is the other one? Name and mantra. They're getting the look of a Vaishnava, the tilak, the look of a Vaishnava. There's 5 different ones. I'm actually forgetting the last 2, unfortunately. Beads, mala, kuntimala. Kuntimala, maybe that's it. I feel like those are grouped into one, the kuntimala and the tilak. But in any case, there's these 5 elements that one is getting. Name, I said that. So that initiation process, especially the mantra, the Gayatri mantra, which is used for deity worship, that initiation process is the process into Pancharatrika Marg. Connection to parampara is established immediately when one hears. It's established by hearing. You can't say, if you're hearing from a Vaishnava, if you take Prabhupada's books and you start hearing and you start following, you're connected to parampara. Shukadeva Goswami did not give a big yagya for Maharaj Parikshit. The connection to parampara is from hearing. The initiation process is a formal connection. And the example given, of course, this is not in the context of Vedic culture, but in American culture, that the example works, right? Boy and girl meet, they fall in love, then they get married. The marriage is not the cause of the love, the marriage is the symbol of the love. So in the same way, when one is hearing from a guru, ideally a Shiksha guru, and they're becoming inspired, that process, that connection is established via the process of hearing. Now this yagya is a ceremonial recognition of that initiation process, and now there's an official thing. You're officially accepted into the parampara. And the Diksha Guru is also, he does something with your past sinful activities also. He plays that role. But ultimately, the process of Bhagavat Marg, which is the more powerful process, is who you're hearing from. That's why we have an emphasis in ISKCON on hearing from Srila Prabhupada, because Srila Prabhupada is our preeminent Shiksha Guru. And one may not have very much contact with their, Diksha Guru. They may have many Shiksha Gurus who are giving them more shelter and more guidance. And, if you read the, first chapter of CC, the Spiritual Masters, Prabhupada says, the Shiksha Guru is he who regularly, on a daily basis, gives practical instructions in the execution of devotional service. That person is very, very important. And so in our society, our Diksha ceremony has been split into 2, because Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati, understanding that the general person is not qualified to actually take Diksha in the Pancharatrika Marg, because there's some qualification. And on the basis of this verse, Yanamadeya Shravananu Kirtana Yat Pravanad Yad Smart, my jumbled. I said it already though. That you become qualified to perform Vedic sacrifices by chanting the holy name. If you chant the holy name, you're qualified to perform Vedic yagyas. You're qualified to do actual pujari service. So therefore, there's a preliminary chanting process to where you become qualified to take that Diksha into the Pancharatrika Marg. And so the first initiation is kind of like it's kind of an initiation, a formal initiation into the Bhagavad Marg, because you're chanting. But ultimately, we should understand that we have many gurus, Diksha and Shiksha, and the person we're hearing from, that's going to be the ultimate help. And that's going to be the ultimate deliverer, the person we're hearing from, that's actually giving us the guidance. And the Diksha Guru, we may be hearing from him too. He may play the role of a Shiksha Guru. And in many cases, he does. Especially in Tucson, we have our Jnana Prabhu very close. So he's Shiksha. Shikshas are so many devotees here. But if someone doesn't have so much contact with their Diksha Guru, And that Diksha Guru served as a person who initiated one into the process of the Pancharatrika Marg. And now that person's ideally doing deity worship and becoming purified from it. So in this way, there's a difference. And I just think it's an important point to understand. And that deity worship, that Pancharatrika Marg, is going to deeply affect an individual who practices it sincerely. And ultimately, it will increase their ability to hear and chant. I mean, if you know any really serious pujaris, they're always really engaged in good hearing and chanting. Like our Divya Sham Prabhu in Phoenix, he's like a totally super pure devotee. But I see that everywhere I go, that the people who are very sincere pujaris, many times they have very good chanting and hearing sadhana also. Because if it's working right, that's what should happen. And the same with the grihastas. The deity is the center of their household. So this helps them purify their senses. This helps them live nicely. And therefore, they're also able to increase their attachment to hearing, to chanting, to Krishna, and not engage in lower forms of sense gratification. So, yeah, I think I'll end here. I have a few more things, but I think we'll end here. Yes, Prabhu.
A great example of that, what you just said, is when I go to Knoxville, this Indian family I stay with.
Was it Gorgadadhar?
Gorgadadhar.
Amazing devotee.
They're just totally absorbed in, they have a morning program every day. You get up, and throughout the day, it's like they're chanting or they're talking about philosophy or they're reading. They give class online. Amazing.
Gorgadadhar's family is one of the most amazing grihasta families I've ever come across in my entire time in ISKCON. They're incredible. Yeah, they're incredible. Rasa Kelly and amazing devotees.
Yeah. Hari Priya.
Hari Priya, yeah, really amazing devotees. When my Guru Maharaj has been giving them shiksha for almost 20 years, and we were in Mayapur. They were there. And, it's like their eagerness to serve makes them almost uncomfortable, because they wanted to be with Guru Maharaj, and Mati was practically crying because she was, he's like, well, I'm not going to go to your house. We would meet at like one of the prasadam stands, and she was like, serving, still trying to serve so nicely, just like the mundane prasadam. There's no such thing as mundane prasadam, but I mean, just like, like prasadam, like fries and things like that, weird things like that. So Maharaj was feeling like uncomfortable. They were being so just amazing servants, amazing devotees. Yeah. Thank you for sharing. Yes, Manji.
In that morning walk, which I referred yesterday to about the anxiety, Prabhupada actually says the purpose of deity worship is to cultivate Krishna anxiety. And he says, there's two anxieties. Prabhupada says the mundane anxiety, where is money, where is woman? And we have to transfer that anxiety, where's Krishna, is he happy? And that's what deity worship helps us to transform that anxiety. And he says punctuality and cleanliness, they are the 2 points. Because we imagine if there was not that time limit, then there would be no anxiety if we could just spend 5 hours there dressing, doing this, that. But no, the time is very limited, and that creates the anxiety. Yeah, and then and then Prabhupada continues saying, once we cultivate the Krishna anxiety through deity worship, then we will always be in anxiety for the upliftment of the conditioned souls and
absolutely. I think that's an experience every first time Pujari dressing the deities experiences that. The first time I was dressing these, I started to cry a little bit because I was running out of time. I started to freak out. It started to break me down and cry. And my own personal Giriraj, he has a very strict schedule he keeps me on. And even yesterday I was because I'd been somehow, I usually get up really early, but I've been really tired staying up late preaching. And so I was thinking, I don't think I can do it today. And I remember like beating myself in the head, like, this is not something I can, this is a thing this is love. So then I did it anyways. And I feel always uplifted. So thank you for coming. Yes, Mother.
Yeah, I have two things. One is certainly during deity worship. I know I say this like every time that we talk about deity worship, but it really facilitates like thinking about Krishna a lot more than you would otherwise right now, because like every single time I walk past a flower, I'm thinking, oh, I wonder if I can get that flower and put it on my altar for Krishna, and so that is really nice, and I also experienced that anxiety of addressing the deities and being like in tears because things are just not cooperating, And then it always works out at the end. But anyway, I was going to ask you another question, but I think it's kind of late.
At one time, the first time I did the Mangal Artik, I was so nervous. My legs were shaking actually during to offer each item. My legs were shaking. So it's always ecstatic. Also, just in regards to that point, that it really is a greif way if you have extra money to spend. It really, it's a great way to have deities, because you think, I would love to buy Krishna this new. I spent hundreds of dollars on oil for my Giriraj. You think, or buying new clothes for Gauranga. You're always thinking, how Krishna would like that. And when I was in Mayapur, I spent so much money just buying, silver paraphernalias and new flutes and different things for, that I would never spend money otherwise, but it's worth it because, that propensity to spend money, you can now spend it for Krishna, and you can make your deity worship nicer. And when you do something like that, you offer Krishna a nice new silver flute or a silver cup, you can actually really feel, oh, this is nice. Krishna appreciates the love in that. So it's sweet. Okay. Srimad Bhagavatam ki. Thank you all very much.
Slower,